Hey, Patrick Moran here. I am checking in on an important issue, a critical issue. Last night we listened in and had a chance to say a few words at the Environmental Council of Alexandria meeting last night regarding Taylor Run. Now, this is an important issue and it's a complicated one because what it does is unfortunately pits state resources, which our city desperately needs, against ecological concerns, which we must desperately protect. Now, this is a perspective that we are uniquely positioned to chime in on, and it's one that we're doing. If you follow our Facebook page, we've got information that speaks to the compromise that our city and our city leaders ultimately need to seek. What we run into in this false premise that unfortunately we face is that the contractors that are ultimately going to bid on a project like the Taylor Run and Strawberry Run and other sort of ecological restoration projects is one in which they're looking at it to how we can do it most efficiently, most effectively. And that requires the biggest equipment you can possibly get on site. Now, what does it mean to have big equipment? It means cutting down trees, old growth trees, trees that are critical to our ecosystem, critical to carbon sequestration, and one of the few natural green spaces that we have left in our city. We have to protect that. That's core and critical to Alexandria being the greatest city in the world, greatest small city in the world. And by the nature of our smallness, so too can the relationships that we have facilitate communication. Now, there were folks that spoke last night, experts that live in our city that care deeply about its future. Unfortunately, we find dynamics in which some of those experts have what have come and be termed as adversarial relationships with our current leadership. That's a shame, because we share a common goal. We share a common vision of ensuring that our city is great. That's important. That's what we have to get behind. That's what we have to communicate on. That's ultimately what's going to facilitate a compromise and a solution that understands it might not be the easiest thing. But by looking at the science and how it has evolved over the 3 years since our city initially went forward and proposed for grants to support with some of these restoration projects, the science has changed. I encourage our city leaders, look at the soil ecology. Look at the impact of compaction. Look at how it kills soil strata and inhibits its ability to ultimately sequester sequester carbon, which is critical to not only our future in Alexandria, but our future in the world. This is important. It's this role of leadership to say something about it. Even if it means friction, you have to address this. I encourage, I plead, I ask that our city council go to city staff, say, hey, let's stop, let's slow this down. There's opportunities within our legislative dockets to discuss these types of issues. Let's slow it down, let's evaluate it, let's make sure that the RFP that we're looking at takes into account the latest science, takes into account the facts, how the whole system has changed in the 3 years since we initially went forward, and ensure that the steps are being taken make the most sense. There are ways of doing what ultimately needs to get done in Taylor Run that are far less impactful, that utilize far more sustainable practices to ultimately improve stormwater quality and mitigate an issue which potentially could find ourselves in the same situation, or potentially a far worse one in 2 years the next time we get that heavy storm. The heavy storm we know well. The heavy storm that in our business we get called in to help folks with flooding. It's a critical issue, but it's one that can be done responsibly with the right facts, the right intentions, and the right goal to make Alexandria the greatest city in the world. Let's do it together.